For
Everybody.
joining us today. How was it's a big day for America today. Did you watch the inauguration this morning? How was it?
I did watch it. I usually wake up early to work, and so I was able to just sort of watch it while I was having my coffee this morning and caught the vice president and president swearing in, but later just recently watched the inaugural poet, and it was just a really nice start to the day. That there was nothing, you know, um, disruptive to wake up to, and yeah, I did not really put together the dates when I agreed to do this call today, but I'm like, oh, great! It's a
I
great
know,
new
but
start to the year.
right, what a way to start the year. I mean, I didn't when I was choosing out the dates, typically we do Women in Tech on the third Wednesday of each month. So I wasn't aware that it was going to coincide either. But I think it's great, that
I
we
do too.
we have the inauguration this morning. We're talking to you in the afternoon. So
Hmm.
let's start off, kind of telling our audience a little bit about you. I know you're from Hawaii. We chatted a
Hmm.
little bit when you came and visited us at a Sandbox. I remember early last year at our first Wetware Wednesday here at a Sandbox. Um, but you spent a great deal of time in New York. I remember you telling me. So what made you come home?
Yeah, well, it was a combination of things. I grew up on the Big Island and went to college at NYU, and then from there moved to upstate New York and sort of went back and forth to the city often. And I never really thought that I would move back to Hawaii for a long time. My career was in the arts,
Mhm.
and I didn't see a feasible path to that at the time. But as Heading Gears grew and sort of my way of working changed, as the world changed, I realized that I could really create my own business journey here. And then also personally in my life, my parents were getting older, they were sort of having more time.
Mhm.
And I missed home, after a while living so far away, I just missed sort of the connection to the Japanese side of my culture because in upstate New York it was there not as diverse, and I missed all of the things that just make Hawaii so special.
Mhm.
That I think when you grow up here, occasionally you take for granted, and then if you do go away to school and experience that other life, you start to look back on it and think, maybe this is a place I can really settle down in and kind of bring together both experiences. But I will say that initially, our plan pre-COVID was to actually make our home base here in Hawaii, but still be able to travel and work from, New York from time to time, which is where my husband's family is. And the pandemic has, forced more of a permanent relocation at the moment, although this is what will be for the foreseeable future for sure.
Mm-hmm. So,
Mhm.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because, we have a lot of people kind of coming home or people moving here for the first time to figure out if they can make Hawaii home, right?
Mhm.
So, for those who are returning, people like yourself, do you have any tips for them on how they can reestablish local ties and grow roots and, rebuild their lives here again, after being away for quite some time?
Yeah, well, I'm the oldest of three children, and I always had, I think, more of a independent streak in leaving to go to New York in the first place. And I had, one of the things that was nice about moving back is I had this built-in network of family that could help that transition, whereas like everything else in my life transitioning, I was completely, had to create my own networks and sort of
Mm-hmm.
do everything on their own. So that is something that I think just was a real comfort. But also, culturally, I think I've spent about half my time in New York, half my time here. So I really had to be aware of, how I had changed as a person, just and kind of like readapting to the style of business, the style of communication. I had lost a lot of like sort of the connection with um, like local culture and sort of even Hawaiian culture. And so this has been a really wonderful time to reconnect with that. And I would say it's also just important to get out there as much as you can these days. But I've been doing a lot of meetings with people just through Zoom, and even the way that we met you and the stuff that has been going on, I find it's just people here are so open to connecting and to helping, that as long as you put yourself out there and kind of approach your interactions with people with a level of like service and sort of what can I do in exchange for you, I think that's really the biggest thing that has made the move back so smooth.
Yeah,
Um,
you started out at Box Jelly, right?
mhm.
You guys had an office there or something? Or
Yep. We had a sort of a physical office space, and we still have a membership there, but it's more of a floating desk membership at this point because we now work from our home partially for because of the pandemic, but also just because our workday starts so early in the morning. It's just a little easier in the morning to get up. But Box Jelly has been, and Entrepreneur Sandbox has been such a great gathering place for people who are, also working for themselves or working for larger companies, but here remotely, and just a really friendly community that we're really happy to be a part of.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. We're hoping
mhm,
to bring Wetware Wednesday back. We're not sure when,
mhm.
but we'll probably see you at the next one that's happening
Yeah,
if we can
yeah,
do it together.
yeah. And I mean, one of the reasons we chose to move to Honolulu was that we saw all of these sort of tech and creative events that were happening. So I think we were able to go to like creative mornings,
Mm-hmm.
several of the sandbox events, the East Meets West conference. I mean, compared to where I came from and sort of the 2 hours upstate New York, they're just you have the benefit of being in more of an urban environment, but one that feels sort of small town. So um, it's just been, I don't know if that's so much a recommendation of how people can grow their roots, but I think just, it's not intimidating. I didn't find it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How about for people who are new, like completely new to the island? Do you think there's something that they should know? Maybe if they had to walk away with something.
Yeah, I think that we're in an interesting moment right now where remote work is becoming mainstream, and places that are lovely to live in, like Hawaii, are going to experience sort of an influx of professionals who are sort of here both to work and be safe, but also because it's an extended vacation in some ways, or there's more of that leisure mentality. And I think that just being aware that you're part of this larger movement and the history of Hawaii and sort of, your place as a tourist, or, being respectful to the community that you're coming into is even more important now. It's always been there,
Yeah.
but, it's a fragile, it's a fragile ecosystem that we're in. We have really beautiful ecological, ocean life and nature, and that um, not having visitors, I think, has opened up people to understanding sort of the difference between having a lot of folks moving or a lot of tourists here and then sort of having just locals here. So I think there's going to be an interesting time for places like Oahu with these programs that come in. And I think it's just, being considerate. And
Mm.
if you are going to be here for an extended period of time, like 30 days or more, maybe find some way to get involved outside of just sort of, enjoying yourself here and doing the work that you're doing. What are things that you can kind of give back to?
It's a great point, yeah. And
Mhm.
for those who are looking to give back, especially in the tech community, always feel free to reach out to us at HTDC, and we can figure something out and see where you can fit in. So let's talk a little bit about your career, because that's the interesting part for me. Because when I first met you, it struck me as very like artsy, right? And I was like, oh, okay, it's cool that you guys are doing e-commerce. So how did they blend together? So you mentioned that you started out in arts management, right? In a way, and clearly
Mhm.
from your profile, photography is kind of a passion of yours. So can you share a little bit about that experience with us, kind of starting out in that field?
Yeah. I originally went to college to study photojournalism specifically. I was interested in journalism, but also I've always been a visual person with that, left brain way of seeing the world. And I didn't end up doing that, but my career started out in that and then went into fine art. So I worked for some galleries in the city and then moved upstate to work for a nonprofit organization founded by a gallerist. And through that, facilitated and managed their artist residency programs, was able to curate some shows, and was in a small but scrappy team of other nonprofit arts administrators. And from there, I went to a larger nonprofit called OMI, which had a sculpture park and a lot of contemporary artists that they supported. And in both of those jobs, I also freelanced for other organizations as a consultant. I think I really was drawn to the entrepreneurial aspect of nonprofit, and people think that it's funny when they say, you know, they look at my background and sort of the very different things that I do.
Mhm.
And I like to tell them that there's nothing, often like in nonprofits, it feels very entrepreneurial because you're very scrappy, you're sort of very mission driven. At the end of the day, it's about the impact that you have and not so much, you know, processes and, you know, there's a lot of like ability to just kind of do what you want to do and see the results of what you want to do. So that I think gave me a very early sense of like work ethic and sort of being part of a larger sort of system and being kind of aligned mission and values with people. And then in terms of like my technical background, I was wearing so many hats that I just started to do, you know, email marketing, and I started to do graphic design. And in nonprofit work, most of that is around, you know, like cultivating donors and stuff like that. So just thinking about it in campaigns, you know, it translates to what we do now. And it also, I think, translated to being a designer and defending your design work, because when you're in art school or you're working with artists, you're in a like critique environment a lot of the time where you need to be able to verbalize your ideas and defend your ideas in a way that is productive. And that has been a very, very useful skill that I think has been honed through those experiences. So when I joined my husband at Hidden Gears, I initially was thinking the same thing. You know, this is such a different career path from what I've been doing. And I actually felt once I had done it that I was being more creatively engaged than I had been before. Because in my previous role, I wasn't on an artist track, and that just wasn't my path. But I had to now, you know, sort of work on a production schedule, level up my design knowledge, and just really professionalize that practice. So it's sort of, you know, there's a lot of, I think, holistic and multifaceted things to the careers that we chose, but that is sort of how I came to do what I do, and how the background of arts and photography influence what I do now.
Yeah, so many questions. So like, was it a natural transition for you? Like, I don't know, if my husband was like, join me, I'm like, I don't know. And what
Yeah,
made
no,
you, yeah.
it wasn't at all natural. I mean, it wasn't planned, but so Paolo started Hidden Gears in 2015 after sort of doing tech development work on the side, kind of throughout his whole life. He had a career that sort of wove in and out of tech, but also, like me, had a liberal arts background, and he was just always, you know, good at kind of translating complicated ideas and dealing with clients and doing the work reliably, which is something that is actually very challenging sometimes, unfortunately, with developers as a freelancer. And he got his first business through a previous agency job that he had, and just sort of through the power of word of mouth, it got to the point where, as one person, he couldn't handle it all. So when he initially asked me to join, I said, you know, absolutely not. I'm not really ready to leave this other career that I've had for so long. I don't really know what that would mean. And also, I don't know how I feel about us working together. At the time, we weren't married. And, you know, eventually he kind of, I'm not sure exactly what the moment was where I agreed to do it, but I did agree to do it, and I wanted to grow. I was already feeling like I wanted to grow into doing some design work for myself and just kind of consolidate the roles that I had, because I was freelancing and I had a day job, and it just was, I was looking for a little bit of like focus and simplicity, and I also was sort of hungry for something new, new and different. And it's been great. I mean, I think it's never what I expected to do, but looking back, I can't really imagine doing anything else.
Mm-hmm. So like, do you had to negotiate, your package when you joined Hidden Gears? How was that?
Yeah. Yeah, so I was also sort of aloof. So initially I said, I'll just help you out part-time, and then we'll see, because I wasn't ready to just abandon everything, and over time it became clear that this was really a business that had legs, and we would renegotiate from time to time. And I think those conversations, it sounds really like, I don't know, not romantic, I guess, but it really established so much trust early on, because he started the company. So there was a time in which, I had worked myself up to being like not quite a full like 50-50 partner, but I was still working pretty much all my time on it. And so occasionally there would be these moments where, I was like, look, I feel like I'm here, I feel like I'm taking on the same risk, but how do we make sure that your original like kind of stake and sort of the way the company has developed, because it started out as sort of a development only shop, that kind of influenced the jobs that we were getting too. So we always had a period where we would meet and reassess what are our goals, personal and professional, and then how do we both feel about this partnership. And I think I became fully a 50-50 partner. I think it was a couple years back now. And it just clicked, because I think up until that point, our challenges early in the business were more about, learning how to do the work, learning how to deal with clients, just running the nuts and bolts of it and learning how to work together, and building up that respect, mutual respect, and sort of defining our roles as they overlap, but also as they don't. What areas of the business I can completely trust him with, and which I can completely, handle independently, and which are really strengthened by both of us being there. So it's not for everyone, I'm sure, but for us, it really made sense. And I think part of that is because we have the same set of values and we have the same work ethic and sort of standards, but we have very, very different skill sets and very different personalities. And so that just made a lot of our, even, for example, website build, where there's design and development, there's client relations, and there's project management. And, having sort of two people at the team also just made it a much stronger business. And I realized also in hindsight that almost half of the businesses that I know and respect, small businesses in my life, are also, husband-wife teams, or couples, husband-husband teams, wife-wife teams, whatever. And it just kind of clicked for me. And I was like, yeah, this is actually more common than, I expected. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I worked with both of you, and clearly both of you have different strengths, right? And you cover different aspects. Well, it's nice because you cover the whole gamut for e-commerce, at least when I speak to the both of you. So maybe just to kind of give the audience some context, tell us what you do. I mean, you are the CMO and kind of co-owner or owner of Hidden Gears. So what do you do at Hidden Gears?
Right. So we like to say we're a micro agency, because a lot of agencies these days are, 10 and more people. We're 4 people, and we, that's intentional. And we design, develop, and market through digital platforms, e-commerce stores. And we mostly these days are working with Shopify. And our clients are, a lot of them are retailers who also have physical stores. Some of them have a wholesale side of their business. Some of them are direct to consumer only. They range in size and from anywhere from $1 to $30 million in revenue. So many of them are also we're also dealing with the founders, and many of them are designing and making the goods that they sell. So we come in when they need an e-commerce dedicated team to handle that side of the business, or we'll plug into an existing team or partner with an existing agency they might work with to help take their sales kind of to the next level, to help remove tech debt, or just kind of provide some UX optimization. And then we'll also run digital ads for them as well.
So you look more at the creative aspect of e-commerce, right? I would say more of the UX, the UI.
I do the UX, UI, the design. I also am sort of like the lead project manager. So if it's not an ad account or it's not a development only account, which is most of what we have, I'm the sort of client facing person, along with Paolo as the technical lead. You know, defining the scope, defining the timeline, keeping it on budget. And Ellen, I feel like you are like a project manager as well, but you know, sort of just yeah, making sure that the business and goals of the business on both sides, ours and the clients, are fulfilled.
So I remember when we first met, you know, I met you, of course, and Paolo, and two of you, and I found out that you guys had two other people on your in your company, so like a team of 4. But you know, I know because of all the work that you have gotten over the last couple of months, you know, you're thinking of expanding. So is the team still at 4 right now? Or are you know, growing?
It is at 4. I think we're looking to probably add one other person. We haven't determined whether that would be a project management role to help, you know, sort of systematize things. Because as you even add, you know, 1 or 2 people from 2, it's like doubling it. So we've spent a lot of time over the last year just refining our processes, but COVID kind of caused us to reassess that role, and also just we were occupied with dealing with the clients that we had. But yeah, I think we'll probably be growing, and we would love to grow that team here as well.
So I just want to kind of switch gears a little bit, you know, and talk about e-commerce, right? Because both of us, we worked together so much last year, from webinars to workshops to, you know, consulting for all the little, you know, small, medium businesses here on island. You know, what kind of, you know, impact did like the pandemic have on Hidden Gears and the kind of work you did?
Yeah, it's a great question. In general, I would say it had a positive impact on us because it accelerated a trend that we've been working with this entire time, you know, with e-commerce. That is one reason we started to specialize in it, is, you know, just looking at the landscape of how people are buying, not just where they're shopping, but how they discover brands and how they're learning about what to get. And so it accelerated, I think, a change that despite, you know, the vaccine, despite us getting out of this, you know, unfortunate year, will still be around, and I think will accelerate and change how we shop. And that has been most felt in our food and beverage clients, which is a category that historically is not been quick to go online because they can rely on their in-person, their retail presence, and also it has additional levels of logic that a lot of e-commerce systems just haven't really built for. But with sort of the survival of our restaurants and our, you know, hospitality businesses at stake, we onboarded a lot of people in that category, and they were some of the most eager and, you know, smart and quick to adjust and pivot. I worked from time to time in restaurants when I was like a student, and then in my freelance career because I enjoy them, and I just have a lot of like love for the hospitality businesses and how much they have to go through. So that was something that we noticed. There were definitely people, I mean, in general, there were a lot of projects that went on hold initially that then kind of picked up later on as we adapted. And then there were some clients of ours that just based on the categories they were in or what they sold, it wasn't for the time. So, you know, we kind of had the situation where we were seeing through our clients a high level view of how the pandemic was impacting them. I mean, there were definitely challenges, and you know, I don't want to, you know, share too much about their individual businesses, but we had some people who were at risk of bankruptcy and others who were doing, you know, twice the sales that they were doing before, because just again, depending on what they sold. So it was definitely a roller coaster. We did a lot of, you know, reacting to what was happening, and we also tried to provide a sense of stability in, you know, the onboarding people into this new system, because it will still be there for them, you know, as things go by. So
yeah. So I mean, we brought over a whole bunch of manufacturers for you guys, which is like a completely different demographic of people too. So you know, I mean, given the experience you had, manufacturers, people, I mean, restaurant businesses or businesses in the hospitality industry, what would be, you know, kind of maybe if you had to give your top 2 points of advice for business owners looking to get into e-commerce, what would you tell them?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I try to talk about this with anyone who approaches us and has no experience sort of with e-commerce yet. A lot of, I think, what happens in anything relating to tech or creative work is that it often gets, the complexity of it sometimes is not obvious, you know, and a lot of people who are unfamiliar with e-commerce sometimes just think, you know, it's just about building a website, but it's not. It's really adding an entire arm of a business down. The website is part of it, and we can do that for you. But if you also need to think about shipping and fulfillment. Who's the team that's handling that arm of the business? If you have other channels of retail, how is that affecting your e-commerce system? Is there inventory sync? There are so many details that go into just getting us online store up and running that affect business choices that we can't always necessarily make for the clients. You know, we can advise, but it's just different. You know, it just depends on how they want to run things and what systems they have in place. They have accounting, you know, SaaS tools that they already need to integrate. And so we always do a period of technical discovery, but we also want to set the expectation early on that if you just put up a website and put some products on it, people are not necessarily going to just buy them. And so figure out those systems, and then once that site is up, also figure out what is your marketing plan, because your marketing channels for a online store are probably going to look very different from what you normally do in your other channels. And the good thing about that is everything is trackable, and you can really see what works. But I think really understanding that, you know, you may want to be having more of an introductory conversation to figure out whether this is right before you actually, you know, just say no, just like put it up. You know, it can save people a lot of time and hassle if that is done first. So we put a lot of emphasis on process and doing that discovery with folks to make sure that we are building it in such a way that it can be extensible and, you know, save you time and earn you money instead of the other way around. Because we've also inherited a lot of what we call sort of rescue projects from, you know, not everything we do is built from scratch. We work on projects that other people have brought to us, and that is also something where you can uncover systems or ways of doing things differently. And so it's just not one size fits all. And I think that that's, you know, anyone that you're working with to launch an online store, even if you're doing it yourself, which is totally possible too, is to put those processes in place first.
Yeah. So if you have questions about e-commerce, feel free to reach out to Akemi Hidden Gears. She's always happy to chat about that. You know, you can feel the passion.
Yep, I am.
So, you know, I mean, given that this is a Women in Tech event, you know, and people tuning in, you know, they're figuring out, oh, what's the best way for me to move into technology, or something that's, you know, a technology-based role, right? So both you and I, we didn't come from traditional like tech backgrounds, but we find ourselves working in technology. So for you, it's, you know, again, UX, UI, so right, that your focus is very much on, as well as project management. Do you have any, advice or tips for someone who's looking to move into a role within e-commerce, or even, UX UI within e-commerce? Because you said you had to do a lot of training and learning, right? So, what is there a quick way to get there? Any advice on that?
Yeah, I definitely have some advice. I don't know if I have sort of a quick way, or even if my path is that typical. I think it's not atypical to not have a background in tech and be in tech. That I think is something that no one should feel intimidated by. That you don't need to come from a computer science background or even necessarily a design degree background. That is something that's beautiful about tech, is that it's evolving so quickly that if you want to do it as a second career or a third career, you can. You just need to, be curious and look for resources and be hungry for that stuff. And that's, I think, what's served me well. And it's honestly something that I have to keep doing because I can't just rely on sort of like my laurels or do what we did. I mean, the company is only 5 or 6 years, about 5 years old. It feels like we've been in business longer simply because each year we have to kind of keep up that learning cycle, and the internet has changed so much, so much. So that can be a challenge, or it can be an opportunity. And then as far as getting into e-commerce, or, is your question like about as specifically a woman in tech, or is it more just in general?
In general, or you can share
yeah.
how maybe you got into it when you first started, right? Because you had to do some learning yourself. Like, what were some of the resources you looked at?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a gender gap in tech in general, and anything that has to do with, coding and development. I have felt for sure that, there could be more people who were women who were doing what I was doing, or who that had a community around that. That's just sort of the reality, but I, really think that it's come a long way. Having mentors, having someone who can help push you and champion you to do that. For me, that's Paolo, and other folks that I've met through the community has been invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think, I just do, because we work for ourselves, a lot of our connections have come from conferences that we've gone to. Other agency owners who are very transparent with their business challenges or business opportunities. And it's just really nice to be able to talk shop with someone who does what you do, but who does it in a different way, So we also learn continually from our clients' challenges. I mean, there's no rule book for someone coming to you and saying, there's a pandemic and I need to sell or launch this website in the next week, or, so that I can keep hiring the people. There's no rule book for certain situations. So I think just being exposed to multiple business challenges in an agency setting or in a freelance setting is a really good way to get started on something, because one, you can figure out whether this is even something you want to do, but it's sort of like being thrown into the mix of just having to do the work and not getting too, introspective about like, am I doing it right? What have you. It's just very results driven. And that's one of the things I like about it.
Yeah. So a lot of learning on the job as well, right? I think for you, kind of.
Yeah.
So, I think one of the cool things that kind of happened over the last couple of months with you was you applied for the Maka Inana program.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Purple Maya. Can you tell us a little bit about it? And you got accepted, of course. So.
Yeah, no, I did. Yes, so Kamake Nana is a program of Purple Maya, which is it's a quite, I think it's about 3 or 4 months long. We meet very regularly around Indigenous design thinking. And their interpretation of design is not like visual design or UX or UI even, but just designing, systems in the world, communities, designing for solutions that solve sort of a larger community need, and approaching that from an Indigenous mindset, which is to say that a lot of the, if you want to get into what a design thinking workshop typically entails. There's sort of steps of the process. You research, you inquire, you prototype, you do this, you do that. And Indigenous design, part of the workshop is we're trying to define what that even means, but is kind of looking at other values in your design work that are not just, financial or sort of goal-driven in that traditional sense, more cyclical, more restorative, more sustainable, and that honor voices that are not typically held up as experts, either in tech or in design in the sort of traditional sense. And it's just been, it's all been through Zoom. It's been a really nice way to connect with other professional. I mean, actually, our work is not sort of, that's what's kind of interesting is I've done fellowships like this in the past, which were sort of broadly about triple bottom line economics, which is like people, profit, purpose. And this is not so much focused on our work, our jobs, but how do you, look and find inspiration in the world. And if you are doing work in Hawaii or even not in Hawaii, looking for expertise from people who, know this place best. And so it's still ongoing. I think we're moving into the next phase where we're going to start to work on some actual projects, which is the part I get most excited about. So,
So what motivated you to apply for that?
Yeah, I was motivated because I am the only designer in Hidden Gears. I was looking for to meet people, number one. I was also in that frame of mind of having moved back here. And it's helped me reconnect a lot with my connection to Hawaii. I'm not Hawaiian and I'm not Indigenous, but I, just as a Kama'aina and kind of understanding more about the language and the mo'olelo of Hawaii. And so that has been truly an education. I mean, at times I feel like it is a college course in Hawaiian studies.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I have been looking for ways to direct my professional life towards the values that we believe in. And I'm not so sure yet what that looks like. There isn't really a clear roadmap for, agencies, e-commerce agencies to follow, but that's sort of the ultimate idea is how can I incorporate these principles into what we do.
Do any of these principles or value systems within the program define you as an entrepreneur?
Within Kama'aina, yeah, I would say that a lot of us are what you would call entrepreneurs, and a lot of us are sort of in that space of like community engagement or policy making, which is probably not thought of as entrepreneurs, but I think has very entrepreneurial aspects as well as the nonprofit. We have a lot of nonprofit folks in it, and we have a lot of designers like myself who are approaching it from more of a design systems and language perspective too.
Mm-hmm. So what is important to you as an entrepreneur?
I think really what is important to me at the end of the day is being, making sure that business and business needs don't supersede my relationships with people, and having sort of a mind towards kindness and entrepreneurship and uplifting the team that helps me do what I do. Like I think the myth of entrepreneurship is that we're all individuals and no one helped us and we just worked really hard and then we made millions of dollars. That's not my experience at all. And it's honestly not the experience of many of the entrepreneurs that I get the privilege of working with. Working with e-commerce businesses, you see how each entrepreneur did what they do, and there's none of them fit into that stereotypical, path. And so to me, that's important because I think if more people understood that it is within reach, no matter what your path is or no matter what your identity is, we'd have a lot more entrepreneurs that are more representative of the world that we live in, and who are solving problems that are also more representative of the world we live in. So I have a really big focus lately on teams and of growing teams for that reason, because I think that's where a lot of businesses get hung up, is finding the right people, growing a team that is aligned. And so one of the things that I've been, that is also part of my role, is sort of, HR basically. And that's something that I actually take really seriously, because I think it's the most important thing, in your group, and that often it's the last thing that people think about.
And you find a right fit, right? People who
Right.
match your value systems and so on. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
do you have a favorite entrepreneur? I mean, doesn't it be some...
Yeah, I have I really like Christina Tosi, who is the founder of Milk Bar. I think I heard interviews with her on how I built this. I listened to a lot of podcasts, or maybe it was Second Life, but her, and then also Kathleen King, who founded Tate's Bake Shop. They both happen to be like female founders of food businesses, and I think that's probably not completely unconscious of like why I like them. I tend to like people who've had sort of a kind of, like just been in the mix of things and done things sort of with their hands and just been really scrappy in that way. I find them both to be really creative and really positive people who also have a lot of grit. And then I think our clients are our favorite entrepreneurs because of what I mentioned earlier. There's just been, they just work really hard, so yeah.
So for those, for people who are contemplating, becoming entrepreneurs, what kind of advice do you have for them? I mean, given that you've done it yourself for the last 6 years, 5, 6?
Yeah. I think that I think the advice I would have is not to wait till everything is perfect to do what you're going to do. Just start, because there are endless delays and reasons to not do something. And that's the difference between having an idea and making that idea a reality. And then 2, I think that understand that it's not just it sounds like a sexy thing to do, but understand that you have the opportunity to get a lot of freedom and direction over your life, but you exchange that with risk. Like, there's risk in being an entrepreneur. And I think having a healthy awareness of risk, whatever that means to you, is really important to understand about yourself. For example, I have a pretty low risk tolerance, and yet I'm doing this, and that just meant that I had to really weigh how I was going to make the transition, that I did it over a period of time. I didn't just quit my job. I maintained like some freelance work. I also did an accounting of where our finances were when we lived upstate. It was a lot more supportive in terms of just the cost of living there for me to do the leap in the first place. So understand your tolerance for risk, but know that it doesn't define whether you can be an entrepreneur or not. And then understand that just because you want the freedom and the opportunity and the potential earning potential of being an entrepreneur, that doesn't necessarily come without additional risk, and that you may have to work harder at protecting your personal time from your work time, or you're going to have to work harder. That's just the bare minimum. You're just going to have to work a lot more.
And for you, it's interesting, right? Because you work with Paolo, who is your husband, but at the same time, you both share the same amount of risk because it's working for the same business, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. You guys face any challenges working? I mean, like either working together for this company or working with each other as husband and wife?
Oh, lots of challenges. Yeah. I mean, we have not faced, I think, the most, well, luckily or fortunately, we've always self-funded the business. So we don't have other investors, we don't have other debt. We've been able to grow it with word of mouth without too much marketing. And that is a huge thing for us. So that, I think, is the single biggest kind of potential risk that we could have faced that we haven't faced, because of the way that we've sort of grown it and positioned ourselves, and also just benefited from timing and the community that we're in. And then other risks have just been, you know, and I think people who aren't entrepreneurs don't really get it when I say this, but there can be too much work, and there can be the feeling that you can't meet all of that, all everyone's demands. And so people who sort of are outside the business world say, well, that's a great problem to have. But it's very difficult when you're the only person that can solve something for someone and 9 other people want the same thing. And if you can't do it, it just won't happen. There's no one else is going to come in and do that. You either have to say, I can't do this for you, or you have to, you know, work and get it done. And so our challenges have been how to, you know, create a pipeline of work that is sustainable for us and is effective for clients, and it's also a healthy amount of work. And then that came into sort of hiring. And initially, I think we hired a little bit too late, where we were already too overbooked to properly onboard somebody. But really over the years and over the last 2 hires we've made, I've really learned so much more from that process. I think that's been my single biggest challenge in terms of going from being just a 2-person company with someone that you work with who's also your partner. It's a very different communication style than going to hiring external people and having a remote team, which I should mention, my other 2 team members are in the East Coast. And so that forces you to level up in a lot of ways with not just being just the 2 of you, you know? So it's been, there's many challenges. I think that question is great. I feel like there are more, but those are probably the biggest ones.
How about, you know, in terms of screening clients, right? Because again, like you were saying, you have limited resources. Do you guys, you know, decide who to take on or not? Is there a kind of like a good fit between agency and client?
Yeah, we do. We're not going to be effective working with someone who doesn't need a dedicated e-commerce partner. So they have to be sort of at that point in their business where they're coming up with those challenges I kind of described, where it makes sense for us to join them. That's just where we feel we're most effective. And then we also screen for really just, are they nice to work with? Are they respectful of time? Are they realistic about expectations? Do they have interesting problems to solve? You know, yeah, I think it's mostly comes down to the person. And we don't really screen on like how big is their, you know, company, or what are they selling exactly. But because we've built it up through referrals, the people who are referring us are usually clients or past clients. So it tends to kind of self-select already just because of that.
Cool. So, you know, 2020 was a crazy year for you, you know, and because we worked together so much, it was, you know, it was intense, I remember, right? And probably will be so for the next couple of months as well. How do you stay inspired, hopeful, you know, given all this?
Yeah. Generally speaking, I'm inspired by seeing the good work that other people are doing in my industry, or even just generally. I read a lot of blogs and newsletters, and I listen to a lot of podcasts that are not really about, you know, UX, UI, or e-commerce. Actually, they're just more about trends in tech or trends in business, or
Can you share some of those with us, you know, or with the audience?
Glossy is sort of an online, I think it's really just online, retailer, sort of retail trends, e-commerce trend thing. I subscribe to a newsletter called Chips and Dip, which is like a direct-to-consumer new brand announcement. And they'll, you know, some of the brands, they're mostly very, you know, they're probably all like venture funded and really beautiful design. So I like to look at that just for design reference, but I also, some of the companies that are being created now are so niche. I mean, like, you know, it's like a plant delivery system. I just think that's interesting.
Yeah.
For your potted plants, every month you get a new potted plant, or, you know, like, how does that work from a fulfillment perspective, from a packaging perspective, all that stuff. So I like to find out what new companies are being created.
How I built that, right? I think
yeah,
you mentioned.
Yeah, how I built this, which is just notable businesses and how they started. And Second Life, which is similar, but for women entrepreneurs. Reply All, just about funny tech, internet occasions. Yeah, and the Shopify, you know, for Shopify, it's like a Shopify blog. There's a sort of an Instagram account and I think website called Commerce Cream, which shows like the best sort of an e-commerce design. So I'm very inspired by, and there's a lot of agencies, other agencies whose work I just admire. So I like, and unfortunately I follow some like tech bros on Twitter.
You can get into that later.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a lot more questions for you, but, you know, kind of being conscious of time, you know, for people who have followed the series, they know that we always end with one question for our guest speaker. And that is, give us one word you would like to leave the audience with today and why.
One word. Okay. I would say excellent, because my dad, who's a lawyer, he doesn't do what I do or anything, his only career advice to me ever was just like, just be excellent. Just do what you say. Do what you say. Do it well as you can. And that was it. And I was like, that's actually pretty good. I think that's pretty good advice. So strive for that, and it doesn't have to be in like everything that you do or anything, but just little engagements, you know. I think yeah, that would be it.
Awesome. So we have maybe about a minute or two. I just want to, you know, see if there are any questions from the audience. Feel free to send them in. If not, we will call this session for today. And you can always reach Akemi over at Hidden Gears if you have specific questions for her. I want to, you know, I'll also invite the audience to join us for our next session. But thank you, Akemi, for taking the time to speak with us
thank
today.
you.
And, you know, it was awesome working with you, Paulo, and you know, the Hidden Gears team throughout 2020. And, you know, I'm sure we'll see a lot of each other in 2021, you know, as we do more projects together. And I wish you all the best in your future endeavors and the program over at Purple Mire. So for attendees, again, just a reminder, this session has been recorded and we will share it with you. So keep a lookout in your inboxes. If you enjoyed the session today, we have the next one coming up next month with Kelly Qian, and she is a project manager with eWorld Enterprise Solutions. So her perspective would be very different from what we heard from Akemi today. And we will leave the link over in the chat box. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. If not, we will see you next month. Yeah. All right. Again, thank you so much, Akemi, and, you know, I'll catch up with you very soon.
All right. Thank you so much for hosting. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.